With humility, it also brings you face to face with your own vulnerabilities in a way you've never considered before.
What really happened behind the gates of Kensington Palace the day Kate Middleton collapsed?
This ultimately sells the issue short. I wanted to start a society-wide conversation.
Was it just exhaustion or something far more personal? In a story the palace never wanted told, whispers turned into headlines, and private heartbreak exploded into a public reckoning. For years, the British royal family has managed to navigate public life while keeping its private world heavily protected. It's a balancing act they've more or less mastered, even when facing major moments of crisis. Scandals, divorces, feuds, and other setbacks that would usually shake most families to the core. But what happened recently wasn't like that. This time it felt different, more raw, more personal, and most notably, harder to control. What was expected to be an ordinary afternoon at Kensington Palace quickly became anything but. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, was at home with no public engagement scheduled. She was reportedly spending time with her family, holding internal briefings, and attending to day-to-day royal duties. On the surface, everything was normal. Behind the scenes, though, something deeply unsettling had begun to unfold. By the end of the day, whispers had started circulating among the media, particularly along Fleet Street, the traditional home of British journalism. Something was clearly happening inside the palace. A senior royal advisor was seen leaving in a hurry, heading toward a waiting car. Medical staff had been called. Rumors were spreading quickly, and the question on everyone's mind was the same. What had happened to Kate? Initial reports were vague. Official palace communications cited a minor health scare and later mentioned exhaustion and dehydration. The tone was reassuring, aimed at preventing public panic. But behind closed doors, insiders suggested the situation was far more serious than a simple medical issue. According to several sources with knowledge of the matter, the princess had collapsed, both physically and emotionally. And the reason, they said, wasn't medical at all. It was personal. Not long after, speculation began to shift. A long-standing rumor that had lingered for years was suddenly pushed into the spotlight. An alleged affair involving Prince William and a member of their social circle, Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley. While gossip about the nature of William and Rose's friendship had floated around since at least 2019, it had always remained under the surface, never confirmed, rarely discussed by the mainstream press, and typically brushed off as idle chatter. But this time was different. According to people close to the palace, new information had come forward, substantial enough to cause real distress. It reportedly came from someone credible, with access to private conversations and communications. This wasn't tabloid hearsay. There were, allegedly, text messages, travel records, and even private confirmations that painted a concerning picture. Kate was not only aware of the rumors by now, she had, according to insiders, seen enough to believe them. One palace insider described her as shattered, not just because of what the information suggested about her husband's behavior, but because it signaled a much deeper breach of trust. As future queen consort, Kate has long been seen as one of the most steady and reliable figures within the monarchy. Graceful in public, measured in private, and rarely ever the center of controversy. But this time, the controversy wasn't something happening around her. It was happening to her. Although the palace quickly drafted statements, none were ever released. Internally, the priority seemed to be containment. Keep things quiet, avoid making it worse, and most importantly, stop it from becoming an international media event. That approach, however, didn't last long. Within hours, the internet caught wind of the situation. The hashtag #TeamKate began trending across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Users began posting tributes to the princess, praising her resilience and composure. Others started piecing together past events, old photographs, video clips, and public appearances where William and Kate appeared distant, or where Rose Hanbury had been present in official settings. What had previously seemed like small moments now took on new meaning. Social media sleuths quickly pointed to the resurfaced 2019 reports that Kate had distanced herself from Rose, reportedly after a falling out. At the time, palace aides dismissed the idea of any feud, and UK newspapers that attempted to cover the rumors were allegedly warned off with legal threats. But those stories never completely went away, and now, in light of Kate's sudden health crisis, they came roaring back with a sense of renewed relevance. The silence from the palace didn't help. While some might argue that discretion is part of royal tradition, the lack of public support for Kate during such a visible moment of distress felt cold to many observers, especially when compared to the outpouring of sympathy she was receiving online. For a woman who had never publicly spoken against the crown and had always seemed to follow its expectations, the absence of a clear show of institutional support was, in the eyes of many, deeply telling. By the following day, speculation had overtaken the story itself. British media continued to stay cautious, partly due to the country's strict libel laws and the royal family's known willingness to use legal tools. But foreign outlets were less restrained. European tabloids began publishing front-page stories with headlines about a royal betrayal and a princess brought to her knees. The story was no longer just a rumor. It had become a full-blown international spectacle. Back home, palace staff were reportedly in damage control mode. Efforts were made to manage the media narrative and redirect attention. Still, it wasn't working. The story was too personal, too emotional, and perhaps most importantly, too believable for people to simply move on. After all, the idea of a royal woman being left unsupported in the face of betrayal hit a historical nerve. Comparisons to Princess Diana emerged almost immediately. Many noted the similar public reactions. Diana, too, had faced emotional turmoil behind palace walls, and for a long time the institution had denied just how serious things had been. In this case, the fall wasn't just about a woman collapsing. It was about what the moment represented, a break in the polished surface of royal perfection. And no amount of press control or legal precision could put that back together overnight. In the early years of their marriage, William and Kate were frequently described as deeply connected. Royal insiders often spoke of Kate as William's steadying force. While he had grown up under intense public pressure and had experienced emotional turbulence following the loss of his mother, Diana, Kate was seen as someone who brought calm and structure to his life. Their public appearances were filled with laughter, easy body language, and a sense of unity. Many people believed their bond was one of the strongest among royal couples in recent memory. As time went on, however, subtle changes started to surface. While their public personas remained polished, there were clues that suggested all was not entirely well. People who worked closely with them noted a shift in how they interacted. One former staff member mentioned that they began operating more like professional partners than a married couple. Their schedules were carefully coordinated, and moments of genuine warmth between them became less frequent in public view. The pressure of royal life can't be underestimated. Between official duties, media attention, parenting 3 young children, and living under the microscope of both the public and the institution, the weight placed on their relationship was enormous. It's not unusual for even the strongest relationships to struggle under far less pressure than that. But what caught many people's attention was the growing presence of Rose Hanbury within their social circle. Rose, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley, is married to David Rocksavage, the Marquis of Cholmondeley. They live just a short distance from William and Kate's country residence, Anmer Hall, in Norfolk. Their families share similar backgrounds, and for a time, they moved in many of the same circles, attending the same dinners, social functions, and events. Initially, Kate appeared comfortable with this friendship. Rose and her husband were part of the local aristocratic network, and it made sense that their paths would cross often. But by 2019, something had clearly changed. Reports began to surface that Kate had asked William to distance himself from Rose. At the time, this seemed out of character. Kate had always been known for her composed and diplomatic approach to personal matters, especially those that could become public. The request, according to sources, was unusually direct. Some tabloids speculated that there had been a falling out, but no one could confirm exactly what happened. The royal press office remained silent, and the story faded, partly due to legal warnings that reportedly stopped UK media outlets from digging deeper. But the whispers didn't go away. On social media and in quieter corners of royal commentary, people began asking questions. Why would Kate want to cut someone out so abruptly? Was it personal? Was it protective? While nothing concrete was revealed at the time, the incident left a lasting impression on those who follow the royal family closely. And in hindsight, many now see it as an early sign that things were beginning to fray behind the scenes. Insiders have since suggested that the emotional gap between William and Kate began widening not long after this period. There were claims of tension in private, less shared downtime, and what one royal observer described as a business-like energy during official events. Though the couple continued to perform their roles with professionalism, something had shifted in their dynamic. Kate, by all accounts, tried to maintain a sense of normality. She focused on her children, continued her public work, and did not speak out. Those close to her have said she's not someone who acts impulsively. Instead, she absorbs and reflects, often keeping her emotions tightly controlled. But that doesn't mean she wasn't affected. According to one aide, she doesn't explode, she retreats, she thinks, and she feels everything. By 2022, signs of strain became more visible. Photographers covering royal events began to notice small, telling moments, avoiding glances, stiff posture, and an absence of the casual, affectionate gestures that once defined their public appearances. One image from a high-profile engagement showed Kate blinking back tears, only to smile instantly when the camera turned toward her. Observers speculated that she was holding something in, something too personal to share with the world watching. In private, according to palace insiders, the couple's emotional connection had become fragile. They continued to fulfill their roles side by side, but their relationship reportedly shifted into something more functional than intimate. William, under the constant pressure of his future role as king, grew more withdrawn, more focused on duty than emotion. Kate, meanwhile, was still searching for answers. At this point, she had already begun quietly gathering information, not to stir drama, but to find clarity. According to someone close to her, she reached out to a small number of trusted staff, family friends, and people who had regular access to the couple's social environment. She wasn't launching an investigation in the formal sense, but she was listening, asking questions, and slowly building a picture. What she discovered wasn't a single explosive truth, but a collection of small pieces that, when put together, suggested something was deeply wrong. There were inconsistencies in travel schedules, moments that didn't add up, and communication patterns that raised concern. All of it was enough to create doubt. And while William never admitted to any wrongdoing, at least not publicly or within the palace, he also reportedly failed to offer the kind of reassurance Kate was looking for. This left her in a painful space, torn between wanting to believe her husband and facing the growing possibility that her instincts were right. A source close to the situation explained it this way: she wasn't out for revenge. She just needed to know whether what she was feeling was real, whether the life she had built was as stable as it appeared to be. By late 2023, the emotional distance had become nearly impossible to ignore. Friends noted that William and Kate were rarely alone together outside of official events. Their schedules were meticulously managed, and their appearances were clearly rehearsed. In public, they remained the perfect royal pair. But in private, their bond had weakened. And through it all, the name Rose Hanbury continued to surface, not as an active presence, but as a symbol of a question that hadn't been answered. People close to the couple say Kate was still hoping for some kind of clarity, something that would either confirm her fears or finally put them to rest. But clarity never came in the way she hoped. Instead, she found herself holding on to fragments, partial truths, unanswered questions, and an increasing sense of emotional isolation. What had once seemed like a secure, almost unshakable marriage had slowly begun to erode. And while there was no formal separation, the personal connection that once held them together was clearly under immense strain. Kate continued to play her role, but inside the palace, there was growing concern that she was no longer just managing royal duties, she was holding herself together in silence. But behind palace walls, the topic never fully disappeared. Those close to the royal household knew that the allegations, though unproven, had been a source of quiet tension for some time. Still, without hard evidence or any public acknowledgement, the story remained contained. That was until something unexpected happened. The rumor became a leak, and the leak became impossible to ignore. According to insiders connected to royal press circles, the turning point didn't come from an investigative journalist or a major news outlet. Instead, it came from someone inside the aristocratic circle, someone reportedly close to Rose Hanbury. This unnamed socialite, described as well-connected and with access to private discussions, allegedly sent a series of messages and details to a foreign-based blogger known for reporting on celebrity gossip and high-profile scandals. The blogger's initial post didn't name anyone outright. Instead, it included a vague reference: a senior royal allegedly involved in an inappropriate entanglement with the wife of a family friend. However, the clues were too specific to be misunderstood. The reference to the future king, the mention of a Norfolk estate, and the high-ranking title of the woman involved all pointed toward one conclusion: Prince William and Rose Hanbury. Within hours, royal watchers on social media had pieced it together. Hashtags started appearing. Online forums exploded with discussion. People shared screenshots, past photos, and timelines that seemed to match up with the claims. One photo from a country wedding showing Rose smiling at William while Kate looked away became a viral talking point. Another image, taken at a formal dinner, highlighted a seating arrangement that many now viewed through a different lens. What followed was a digital avalanche. TikTok creators began posting videos speculating on the relationship between William and Rose, re-examining years of public appearances, charity events, and private gatherings. Twitter threads broke down the timeline. Reddit users began cross-referencing travel records and public engagements with alleged sightings. The story had moved far beyond royal gossip. It was now a full-blown internet investigation. Then came the screenshots. Alleged messages between William and Rose, filled with intimate language and references to private meetings, were circulated widely. None of them were verified, and the palace made no comment. But the damage had already been done. Whether or not the messages were authentic seemed almost secondary. In the court of public opinion, the lack of a clear denial became its own kind of confirmation. Foreign media outlets were quick to pick up the story. European tabloids printed headlines that the British press wouldn't touch. One French magazine called it "the scandal the palace can't silence." Another referred to Kate as the betrayed queen-in-waiting. The American press, while more reserved, began quietly covering the growing storm on online platforms. Meanwhile, UK outlets maintained near total silence, bound by libel laws and what many assume was legal pressure from royal representatives. Inside the palace, the situation was reportedly spiraling. According to several staff sources, there was no clear strategy for managing the leak. The typical royal playbook, remaining silent and waiting for interest to fade, wasn't working this time. The internet had changed the game. No matter how many legal letters were sent, the posts kept multiplying. The videos kept circulating. The speculation was only growing. And then came the emotional breaking point. Sources close to the palace later revealed that around this time, Kate Middleton received confirmation from someone she trusted, an assistant who had quietly verified the information that had been circulating online. This assistant, reportedly one of Kate's most loyal aides, brought her what she had long feared: a combination of messages, timelines, and travel records that seemed to support the affair rumors. It wasn't just hearsay anymore. The patterns were too clear, the coincidences too many. Kate didn't react with outrage or confrontation, according to people who know her. Instead, she froze. One insider recalled that she didn't cry or shout. She simply stood there in silence, and then her knees gave out. It was during a private meeting with her team. Medical staff were called almost immediately. The palace later described the incident as a minor health matter, but those close to the situation say she collapsed from emotional shock. Her reaction, as described by aides, was not the result of one message or one headline. It was the culmination of months, possibly years, of quiet suspicion, emotional strain, and the enormous pressure of maintaining a public image while feeling personally isolated. To finally have her fears confirmed in such a stark way was reportedly too much for her at that moment. The palace responded quickly, but not in the way the public might have expected. Rather than acknowledging the growing crisis, they focused on controlling the narrative. A short statement was issued, requesting privacy and citing exhaustion as the cause. Behind the scenes, media advisors were instructed to block or report posts, avoid answering any related press inquiries, and ensure no senior member of the royal family commented publicly. But this response only deepened the public's frustration. Why was there silence when the princess had clearly suffered? Why was the institution so focused on suppressing rumors rather than addressing the emotional well-being of one of its most important figures? Online, the reaction was swift and intense. Team Kate was trending again, this time with even more force. Posts highlighted her years of service, her grace under pressure, and the sense that she had been let down not just by her husband, but by the entire institution. Some drew comparisons to Meghan Markle's experience with the royal family, pointing out a troubling pattern of women being left unsupported during emotional crises. The contrast between the royal response and public sentiment couldn't have been clearer. While the palace doubled down on privacy and silence, fans around the world were sharing messages of support, posting photos of Kate and leaving written tributes outside Kensington Palace. Some signs read, "You are our queen," while others simply said, "We see you." Meanwhile, Rose Hanbury and her husband reportedly left the country, retreating to a private estate in France. A brief statement was issued through his office denying any inappropriate relationship, but it did little to stop the conversation. Her name was already part of the narrative, and silence would not remove it. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was described as tense. Staffers were divided. Some reportedly felt the focus should be on supporting Kate, both publicly and privately. Others were more concerned with the long-term image of the future king. The question wasn't just about what had happened, it was about how to manage it. As one insider put it, the problem wasn't only the rumor itself, it was the lack of accountability. The silence felt strategic, not empathetic, and for many watching, that made it even harder to accept. William, meanwhile, continued with public appearances. He looked composed, but distant. Some interpreted his calm as discipline. Others saw it as avoidance. According to sources, he was angry, mostly about the leak and how it had spiraled out of control. But notably, he did not publicly address Kate's collapse, nor did he issue any kind of statement to counter the affair rumors. Within hours, senior palace staff began implementing a crisis communication plan. According to reports from those familiar with the process, telephone lines between Kensington Palace, Clarence House, and Buckingham Palace were encrypted. All press liaisons were told to pause any unofficial media contact. The message was clear: contain the story. No comments, no confirmations, and no engagement with the allegations. This is how the monarchy has traditionally operated during scandals. By withholding responses, they attempt to deny legitimacy to the rumor. But in the age of social media and instant access, silence no longer serves the same purpose. Legal teams were also instructed to begin monitoring digital platforms. Their job was to report social media posts that could be considered defamatory or in breach of privacy. Websites that carried unverified claims were reportedly contacted with quiet legal warnings. Publications were reminded of strict libel laws, and traditional media partners were expected to hold the line. But while the mainstream British press largely remained quiet, the story continued to dominate online conversation, especially across international and independent platforms. As efforts to manage the narrative unfolded behind palace walls, what was happening on the outside told a very different story. People were furious, not only because of the affair rumors, but because of the way Kate was being treated. Supporters flooded social media with messages of sympathy and admiration. Thousands of posts referred to her as a modern Diana, calling out what they saw as a repeated pattern: a royal woman facing emotional hardship, while the institution retreated into cold formality. Some critics also began to question why William, a future king, had received so much protection from the palace, while Kate remained silent and largely hidden from view. The comparisons to Princess Diana became louder, not just in tone, but in detail. Diana too had faced betrayal, media pressure, and emotional abandonment while being expected to maintain appearances for the sake of the crown. For many, it now looked like history was repeating itself. Inside the palace, the atmosphere reportedly became tense and divided. Some aides were said to be uncomfortable with the approach being taken. They believed Kate's well-being should be addressed directly, and that public support would mean more than another round of silence. Others, especially those closer to William's private staff, focused on controlling the message and preventing further leaks. What truly shocked insiders was the document that reportedly circulated the morning after Kate's collapse. It was said to outline the official position: no acknowledgement of the affair rumors, no tolerance for private investigations into the prince's personal life, and a general reminder that the institution does not comment on unverified stories. Some staff members were reportedly disturbed by this direction. One source described the atmosphere as cold and transactional, noting that concern for Kate's emotional state seemed secondary to the optics of the crown. Princess Anne, known for her quiet strength and strong moral compass, was reportedly one of the few senior royals to directly question the palace's response. She is said to have challenged advisors on why Kate was being kept out of sight while William carried on with public appearances. Others in the royal family, like Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, were also seen spending more time with Kate's children, a move some interpreted as subtle solidarity. Meanwhile, Kate remained out of view. According to those closest to her, she was in recovery, not just physically but emotionally. She was said to be surrounded by a tight circle, including her sister Pippa, her mother Carol, and a handful of longtime staff. Medical experts reportedly observed signs of extreme stress, including physical exhaustion and significant weight loss. While official statements continued to speak of rest and privacy, behind the scenes, the picture was far more serious. Throughout all of this, Prince William made no public reference to the affair rumors or to his wife's health. He continued with scheduled engagements and appeared composed. But sources say his focus was more on managing the fallout than supporting Kate directly. One royal aide described him as furious over the leak and desperate to regain control of the media narrative. But notably, his concern was reportedly directed more toward reputational damage than the emotional toll on his wife. This approach drew criticism, even from those within the palace. Some believed the lack of emotional response only deepened the public's suspicion. Others feared that the refusal to support Kate openly could have lasting consequences, not just for the couple, but for the monarchy itself. As one observer noted, you can't ask someone to sacrifice everything for the institution and then leave them alone when they break. Outside the palace, the backlash was growing. Public support for Kate swelled, with hundreds of thousands of people sharing images, quotes, and well wishes. Petitions circulated online, demanding formal acknowledgement of her situation and better treatment for royal women in general. The phrase, "We see you," became a common message shared by supporters, accompanied by photos of Kate looking isolated or overlooked at public events. International media outlets, no longer concerned about royal protocol, began publishing more direct stories. Headlines in European newspapers accused the palace of betraying their future queen. American commentators began asking why there had been no public gesture of support from William. Even royal correspondents, often known for their loyalty to the firm, began raising questions in private. Meanwhile, Rose Hanbury and her husband had reportedly left the UK. A formal denial of the affair was issued through their legal team, but the statement was brief and vague. The lack of detail only added fuel to the fire. While Rose remained silent, the court of public opinion had already cast its judgment. As the palace attempted to contain the story, something deeper was happening beneath the surface. The scandal had triggered more than just a moment of drama. It had exposed a growing disconnect between the institution and the people. Many saw the response as outdated, insensitive, and damaging. And increasingly, people began to ask if this is how the monarchy treats one of its most loyal and visible members. What does that say about the system itself? Inside Kate's circle, there were discussions about what the future might look like. Divorce, according to sources, was not actively being considered at the time. But the dynamic had clearly changed. The once solid relationship between Kate and William was now described as strained and fragile. Trust had been broken, and even if it were rebuilt, it would likely never be the same. Those close to Kate said she was beginning to reevaluate her role within the monarchy. For years, she had followed the rules, played her part, and kept personal struggles behind a composed public image. Now, that image has cracked, and rather than being destroyed by it, some suggested Kate might use it as a turning point. She was reportedly considering a shift away from purely ceremonial roles and toward projects she could lead on her own terms, initiatives that aligned with her values, not just royal tradition. Meanwhile, Prince William faced increased scrutiny. Once seen as the monarchy's most promising modernizer, he was now viewed by some as emotionally distant and overly focused on optics. His approval ratings, according to various reports, had started to slip. The warmth that once defined his public image seemed to have faded. And with Kate emerging as the figure of public sympathy, the balance had shifted. The royal family had hoped that silence would bring calm. Instead, it created division, not just between the public and the institution, but within the monarchy itself. It placed Kate at a crossroads. For the first time, the future of the monarchy didn't seem to rest solely on the shoulders of its next king, but on the woman beside him, who was now redefining her position not out of ambition, but necessity. Kate Middleton may still be silent, but the world is no longer waiting for official statements. They're watching her next move. Whether she chooses forgiveness, distance, or a completely new path, one thing is clear. She now holds something far more powerful than a title. She holds the public's trust, and in the modern age of monarchy, that may be the most valuable crown of all.